Hi, it's Bijapur. Welcome to another video, this one a bit more chill than the others. I love webcomics. Well, at least a specific kind of webcomics. I know the word covers a variety of different works. I'm talking about those made by independent artists who want to tell their own stories and share them for the World Wide Web. They're great. I love seeing what other things people can come up with, I love admiring the art. Hell, I even enjoy the experience of waiting for a new chapter to come out and theorizing on what might happen next. That's why today I want to present to you a few webcomics that I think you should check out. And since this is a channel of a guy who draws cats, I'll be focusing on comics about animal characters. I am making this video to highlight artists whose works I love and to spread positivity. That's why, alongside talking about their webcomics, I'll also be mentioning ways to support them financially, so that they can keep making more art that you and I can enjoy. Also, links to both the artist and the comics will be included in the description. Before we start though, let me clear some things up. Number 1. I am focusing on comics that are still going on with new pages and chapters coming out consistently as of the making of this video. I am not including any comics that have been cancelled, abandoned, or are on an indefinite hiatus. 2. This is gonna be a relatively spoiler-free video. I might reveal some info about character arcs and motivations, but if it seems like I'm saying something that sounds like a spoiler, it's probably not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. I won't be talking about any big reveals. 3. The video title is kind of a lie. I'm gonna be including one comic about human characters. Sorry to everyone who feels betrayed right now, I'll explain myself when we get there. But aside from that, all other webcomics here are centered on other animals. No people allowed. First of all, I want to give an honorable mention to 2 webcomics that are still in development and hadn't come out yet, but have a lot of potential. Both of them are being made by extremely talented artists and have really promising premises. The first one is The Immortal Hate, an upcoming horror mystery comic being made by Arachnids, who you may know as the guy that helps me with my Dark Forest videos. The story is inspired by warrior cats as well as the Magnus archives and follows Gladiolus Flare, a young warrior of the Silent Woods who tries to investigate the tragedies that had befallen his colony. In the process, he unveils hidden horrors, meets unlikely allies, and comes face to face with things that wish to see the world suffer and burn. I had the pleasure to be the beta reader for some of the chapter scripts for this one, and I promise, I am not being biased here when I say it was absolutely amazing. The character writing was so good. The webcomic most likely won't come out anytime soon, but don't fret. In the meantime, you can get to know more about the story as well as its prequel, Soot Creek's Binding, through Arachnid's YouTube channel and the Tumblr blog dedicated to it. And if you like it, you can throw them a coffee. The second upcoming comic I want to mention is Cathedral by Brett Cat. This story takes place in an abandoned lake town inhabited by 3 cat colonies that had been the setting of a horrible tragedy. Darcy Darrow, one of the colony members, went on a horrifying murder spree that only ended after she was killed by the paws of her own mother. Now, a year after her death, bodies bearing the same marks as her victims start showing up again. In response, 3 cats will have ties to Darcy: Rook, her son, Splinter, the daughter of one of her victims, and Moth, who was found as a kitten bearing the same marks as the corpses, band together to figure out what's going on. If this sounds interesting to you, you can visit Cathedral's Tumblr blog and Brett Cat's YouTube channel to get to know the characters and setting better. And if you want to go a step further, Brett Cat's Patreon is the way to go. It has even more content relating to the comic, and soon will even host script snippets and unfinished pages. The webcomic we'll be starting with today is Africa by Arvin92. This is definitely the most popular webcomic on the list with almost 5 million views on Webtoons, and it's pretty clear why. Just by the first page you can see that the art is absolutely phenomenal. Not only that, it's the only webcomic featured in this video that's entirely hand-drawn. That's right, Arvin makes all of these pages on paper with Caran d'Ache pencils and Staedtler liners. The only thing digital here is the letters. The plot's pretty great too. Africa, a strict female leopard, lives in the forest with her 2 cubs. However, when an opportunistic male with a mysterious collar named Chewie tries to claim her territory, she may have to make a choice to protect her family and question her morals. The story heavily deals with themes of change, motherhood, as well as how the things our parents pass down to us affect us in the long run. Not to spoil too much, but it's really interesting to see how Africa grows into her mother, accepting her rules and morals before having to confront that maybe she was in the wrong, that relying on yourself is not the way to live. Her relationship with her children is also nice to read about. It's really sweet, and Binti and Mossy are good characters. I also quite enjoy how many different African animals are featured in the comic. Lions, wild African dogs, servals, flamingos, hyenas, caracals, it's great to see. I especially like how we also get to know the prey animals and their society. It's not often that we get anything with gazelles or zebras as the focus. By the way, you may notice that quite a few comics on this list are about African animals, and that's because I was a Lion King kid. I just think they're neat. Anyway, because of being such a popular comic, Africa actually has a physical release you can buy for Arvin's Etsy, and since she's Italian, the shipping to other places in Europe doesn't cost more than the actual product, which is a big plus for me. Other than that, a great way to support this comic is subscribing to her Patreon, which grants you early access to the pages. The next comic I want to introduce also takes place in Africa, and it's I Hope So by Calico Pikachu and Detective J. Okay, I know it may seem like I have some bias towards this one. After all, I am a Patreon supporter for this comic, mutuals with the official account on Twitter, and my OC had a cameo in one of the chapters, but I was a fan of this series way before that, and I'm about to explain what makes it so great. The story centers on Hope. A lion is born with 3 legs as she navigates a world of prides, wild nature, and spirits. The comic is inspired by a YouTube show called My Pride, of which the creators used to be fans of, but after becoming progressively dissatisfied with the series, the two decided to do their own take on the same premise. A few of you may be put off by this fact, but I promise, I Hope So is not a rewrite of My Pride. Despite some similar character archetypes, the comic stands really well on its own and has some major differences, especially when the plot kicks in. You really don't need to know anything about MP to get into this. One of the main things the creators took issue with in My Pride was the treatment of its main disabled character, and so I Hope So doesn't shy away from the topic. Through Hope, it depicts the struggle that disabled people from abusive households have to deal with. From overbearing parents that think they're doing their child a favor by shielding them from the world, to family members that treat them like a burden due to their disability. It feels very genuine, especially with Hope's mother Vicious. She really infuriates me. She feels like a realistic portrayal of an abusive mother and makes you want to rip her teeth out. I also like how Hope isn't the only one affected by the abuse. The whole Pride suffers on some level due to the King's Jasper's horrible treatment. It sends a clear message that a child being disabled doesn't excuse their parents' bad behavior due to the stress and struggle of raising them, and that if a kid was only able-bodied, everything would be wonderful. No. If a person treats someone with a disability like this, they're a piece of shit all around. That's exactly why I like Hope's sister Adamant so much. Although she has all that Hope doesn't and at first glance is seemingly treated better than her sister, ultimately it doesn't matter because as soon as she steps out of line, Jasper attacks her. However, at the end of the day, I Hope So is a story about importance of found family. How you shouldn't stick with people who bring you down just because of blood, and how the family you choose is what's really important. It also definitely helps that the comic has a great main lesbian couple, with Storm and Hope being just adorable. Other things that may also sway your decision towards reading this one is the amazing and distinctive art, as well as the incredible effort put into the lore of the series. And if you end up liking it, maybe you should subscribe to the I Hope So Patreon to get to see future chapters before anyone else does. I can officially recommend it. Maybe while you're at it, throw a coffee tip to the individual creators too.
Are you gonna talk about another comic about wild animals set in
I sure am! I promise this is the last one. Tofauti Sawa by the Cynical Hound. The story follows a hyena matriarch named Sahara and her journey of revenge against the lion pride, as well as the animals she meets along the way. This is gonna be all that I'll give out of the plot because in my opinion, this series is best experienced going in blind. A lot happens in just a few pages and it would be a shame to have to spoil it for potential new readers. However, if you're someone sensitive to animal death and violence, please read the warnings. It gets brutal, it's not a easy read at times. But if you do not mind that, you'll find a really great and interesting comic filled with amazing characters. Sahara may not be the protagonist for everyone. In fact, she's really unlikable in the first chapters. She's mean, violent, and uses other people for her personal benefits, but honestly, that's what makes her interesting. Not every main character has to be perfect. I actually quite enjoy those like Sahara. Plus, she isn't all that bad. You can definitely see she has some good in her. I'm really hoping we'll get to find out more about her past as the comic goes on and see what shaped her into the hyena she is now. She and the other main character, Silver, play really well off of each other. His gentle personality and kindness towards strangers contrasts with her aggressive attitude, making them a fun duo to follow. I'm excited to see how their relationship develops. I must also commend the really fun array of animals Sahara meets on her travels. Even if we see some of them really briefly, they're all so varied and likable. It makes me wish the Cynical Hound made one of zines or mini-comics, each having a different little adventure featuring some minor character. In fact, the Cynical Hound, if you're watching this, please take that idea. You can even sell them on Coffee or something. I'd buy that. The last thing I want to touch on is the art. I've been a big fan of this artist's work ever since I saw her animations when I was younger, and I even commissioned her in the past. She's really talented and her style is phenomenal. Just looking at the character designs for the comic, you can see how good it is. I especially love how she draws Safi and Malaika. Their pictures are in the dictionary under the definition of little baby. Just like many other artists in this video, the Cynical Hound has a Patreon where for $5 a month you can get to see 10 pages ahead of the public release, as well as get plenty of other fun stuff. If that sounds like a great deal, go do that, but if you don't have that kind of money, you can always buy them a coffee. So, we are finally walking out of the savannah and coming back to the woods with a warrior cat's webcomic. Meandering by Painted Paw centers on Riverfang, who is the son of the leader of Shine Clan. Growing up, Riverfang had always been told by his father that he's destined to lead the clan after him and save it from a tragedy. However, after his father dies, he is exiled and wants to confront the life of a loner, with the help of his newfound companion, Skipper. I really like how these two can relate to each other's struggles and how Skipper helps him with getting used to not being a clan cat anymore. Their friendship is really sweet, or I guess more than friendship. I'm so excited to see how their relationship develops, especially with Riverfang being a poor closeted gay guy. I also really like the direction the author took with Stone Star, our protagonist's father. Yeah, he's not a great guy. During his childhood, River Kid would idolize his dad a lot, and Stone Star would always spoil him and put him above other cats in his life. However, as he grew up, he would realize more and more that this care stemmed from a wish to preserve his legacy, and that he was just molding him into a perfect successor. It's quite nice to see Riverfang try to break out of that. His arc of turning from a spoiled, arrogant rich kid into a more humble, caring cat is well done. I like how he's the one to take the initiative. Seeing how Stone Star's behavior affected other cats in his life and how they talk about him after his death is really interesting too. I especially like this one scene near the beginning of chapter 2 between one of Riverfang's sisters and her partner. The comic still has a lot of unanswered questions and things we're yet to see, like the exact circumstances of Stone Star's death or some elements of Skipper's past, but I'm really excited to see them revealed. Plus, like with other comics here, the art style is great. I love how Painted Paw draws cats and how good the character designs look. Skipper's by far my favorite though, he's so recognizable and fluffy. If you want to support the comic, go check it out on any of the websites it's on, and follow its creator on Twitter and Instagram. Hi, so in the next segment of this video, I'm gonna be talking about homophobia, and if this is something that's triggering to you, feel free to skip to this timestamp. Okay, so remember when I said there's gonna be one non-animal comic on this list? Well, we're here. Crushed Olive Branches by Hellhunde. Hi, I made a little mistake. The comic is actually called Crushed Olive Branch, not Crushed Olive Branches, but I keep calling it Crushed Olive Branches for the rest of the video. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry, Hellhunde. Please forgive me, I have dyslexia. The reason this comic is here is because this was originally gonna be just a list of webcomics I like overall, but after realizing how many of them were about animal characters, I decided to change the name. I didn't want anybody clicking on this video thinking I'll be talking about whatever weird-looking romance are on the front page of Webtoons this time. This ended with me having to remove one comic I was gonna talk about in the honorable mentions section, but decided to keep this one because I really like it and I think more people should know about it. It's a fan comic of a series called Shadowhunter Chronicles, but even though I imagine it adds to the experience, you don't have to know the books to enjoy the comic. All you really need is the little descriptions the author provides on Comic Fury for some pages. I should also probably mention that the comic has some X scenes, let's just call them. They're all either short and non-graphic or fade to black implied, but alongside some of its more heavy themes of sexuality and homophobia, this one's definitely for a teen or older audience. Crushed Olive Branches is a very character-driven comic. There are some mysteries and an overarching plot, but the relationships and drama between the main characters definitely take the spotlight. And let me tell you, there sure is drama. It would take a long time to explain it all in details, but the main focus of the comic is on Firen and Dominic, two Parabatai, which are sort of like two closely bonded warriors who fight together from what I understand, who have been friends with benefits for 7 years now. One day, Dominic ends up breaking off their agreement in order to find himself a girlfriend, unaware of the fact that Firen's in love with him. However, their relationship is impossible as Parabatai cannot have mutual romantic feelings towards each other or it will trigger a curse. It doesn't help that the Shadowhunter Society is also pretty homophobic, making the entire situation worse. Both Dominic and Firen deal with a lot of leftover internalized homophobia in a way that to me, as someone coming from a rather homophobic country, feels very familiar. I definitely met quite a few queer people here with similar mindsets, who thought they were disappointing their parents by being gay, or were desperately trying to ignore their same-sex attraction for the sake of saving face. A lot of the writing and dialogue in this comic feels very real, which is both good and bad at the same time. Good because it makes it easier to get connected with the characters and shows the author's talent, but bad because it makes the more hard-to-read scenes even worse. Like when Matthias, another one of their friends, tries to awkwardly confess his feelings to Firen, even though we as the audience know they are not reciprocated. Or how Dominic's new girlfriend is very obviously a closeted lesbian. I can just feel the awkwardness and secondhand embarrassment seep through the pages. But on the other hand, I can't look away, because I'm so invested in these characters' personal lives and I want to know what happens next. If you like good stories that focus on character relationships and realistic depictions of the struggles of being a queer person, this comic is for you. Fantasy lovers will also definitely like this one, as there's plenty of werewolves, vampires, and well-designed magical beings. I really recommend this one. Go subscribe to Hellhunde's Patreon. There you can see 10 pages ahead of the public release and access their other comics. And hey, one of them is about a stray cat taking a bet to convince a house cat to live with them on the streets. See, we're coming back to animal xenofiction. It's time to move on to the last comic of the day, The Dog Star by RAZMERRY. It's another Warrior Cats webcomic, this one with a StarClan cat as our main character, giving us the author's take on the universe's afterlife. When an impulsive decision ends up getting her brought back to the living world by accident, Flamesnout is given a chance to live a new life pretending to be a loner interested in joining SnowClan. However, she is not able to leave it peacefully, as the angry StarClan leader Applestar will do anything to get her back and rightfully punished. I really like this comic's portrayal of StarClan. It's not the perfect utopia that the books make it out to be. Applestar is not a good person. Although some might understand her want to correct what was obviously a big mistake, she has no sympathy towards Flamesnout and goes around it in a very ends justify the means way. If that's what the leader of StarClan is like, I can't wait till we find out more about the leader of the Dark Forest, Houndstar. As for Flamesnout, she's a great protagonist. I enjoy following her around and seeing SnowClan through her eyes. I also really like her friendship with another StarClan cat, Shellspring. The two used to be friends back when they were alive, and after her reincarnation, Shellspring crosses into the real world as a spirit in order to help her. The relationship feels very genuine and I like his character a lot. However, I don't want to talk too much about him because spoilers, but just so you know, he might be my favorite character. The Dog Star is amazing. It's filled with a lot of really good secondary characters and the artwork is great. I love how RAZMERRY draws expressions in particular. But, if given the choice, this isn't my favorite work by her. That honor goes to Pinepaw and the Forgotten World. I am not entirely sure if PAVW, as I'll call it short, entirely counts as a comic. It has comic elements, but it's more of an illustrated story in a way that, for example, children books are. Still, I could be wrong. I'm not a comic expert and it's going on the list anyway because it's my video. PAVW is written in a form of sort of journal entries, most of them from the perspective of our main character, Pinepaw. Pinepaw is a part of Baron Clan, a clan who had been living on a desolate wasteland for generations in order to punish themselves for the faults of their ancestors. It's a difficult life, with food and water being scarce and only other clan cats to keep you company. However, Pinepaw doesn't just want to sit around and live his life as normal. Instead, he is determined to get to the bottom of secrets and weird things happening in the area. And when two cats, Cormorant Paw and Egret Tail, become his new clanmates, things only become stranger. One of the main appeals of this comic is its many mysteries. What happened to Pinepaw's uncle and grandmother who disappeared moons ago? Why did Cormorant Paw and Egret Tail join Baron Clan? And most importantly, who is the mysterious Deep Dark? It's exciting and gets you really hooked on the story. Plus, whenever something is actually revealed or a new character is introduced, it's really satisfying because often it was already hinted at in a previous issue. I like that kind of attention to detail. It makes you look back on what happened before and try to find more clues. But the mystery isn't the only good thing about the comic. The characters are absolutely amazing. My favorite one is probably Slugpelt. Minor spoilers, but I really enjoy her arc of growing closer to her kids after the way she had been treated by her mother and mate. There's also Pinepaw's feelings towards Cormorant Paw. It's really sweet and I enjoy seeing him go through a puppy crush. Similarly to Crushed Olive Branches, this series tackles some LGBT problems, albeit ones more reflective of the story's world than the real one. Issues regarding them are often some of my favorites in the whole comic, for example issues 18, 20, and 21. Because of the lack of cats, there's a certain pressure to keep the clan alive by getting together with whatever non-related partner is available and having kids with them. Pinepaw is one of the only two young Toms in the clan, so a lot of people expect him to end up with one of the single she-cats to continue the bloodline, even though they are quite a bit older than him. However, Pinepaw is gay and interested in another Tom, so those things often collide with each other. We also have Cormorant Paw struggling with his own sexuality and Egret Tail being a trans woman, which are all very well handled and I enjoy reading about them. There is so much more I wish I could say about this series, but I'll need to end here. I don't want to give away too much. Just go read it yourself. Read both of these comics, actually. And after that, subscribe to RAZMERRY'S Patreon for early pages of the Dog Star. So, that'll be all for today. I really do hope you guys check out the comics I mentioned because they're all amazing and deserve the praise. I think it's important to show love and support for those who want to tell their stories to the world, especially now. Artists have been having a hard time in the past few years, and if we can't help them directly, at least we can show them that they're appreciated and that we'll stand with them no matter what. We should lift each other up as a community, and if you have an animal webcomic you like, especially one made by a smaller artist, feel free to share it in the comments. Also, shout out to these 3 comics for being apparently really good according to my friends and mutuals, but I never finished any of them, sorry. Okay, go check out my other videos, subscribe, yada yada yada, goodbye.